Kendrick Lamar just dropped the most terrifying confession in rap history. People are saying he's literally possessed by Tupac's spirit, and this isn't a metaphor anymore. This whole situation has the internet spinning because what he admitted in Reincarnated could destroy everything you thought you knew about hip-hop. Everybody thought they knew Kendrick Lamar, the Pulitzer Prize winner, the conscious rapper, the guy who beat Drake in the biggest beef of the decade. That was the version everyone repeated, the genius artist using metaphors and symbolism. But now, this 12-minute track called Reincarnated just flipped the entire narrative on its head. This isn't artistic expression anymore. This is a full-blown spiritual confession caught on tape. Kendrick literally admits he's been reincarnated over 100 times through the bodies of dead musicians. And the most chilling part? He claims he's Lucifer himself. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, he's saying it directly. The whole narrative is twisting. Let me break this down because what's happening in this track is absolutely insane. In this leaked audio, Kendrick's voice literally morphs. You can clearly hear him channeling different people, different eras, different souls. And for anyone who doesn't know, Kendrick has been obsessed with reincarnation since To Pimp a Butterfly back in 2015. But this takes it to a level nobody saw coming. The track is structured like a demonic trial, 3 different lives, 3 different confessions, and at the end, a conversation with God himself that goes horribly, horribly wrong. Verse 1 drops you straight into Michigan, 1947. Kendrick's voice shifts into this raw, gritty, blues tone that sounds exactly like John Lee Hooker, not inspired by, not sampling, channeling. He describes being violently kicked out by his father, left with nothing, struggling in the cold. But here's where it gets dark. He admits to manipulating the masses with lies, dying with pockets full of money from selling his soul for fame. The parallel is crystal clear. Just like Lucifer was cast out of heaven by God the Father, this blues musician was cast out by his earthly father. And Kendrick is saying he lived that life. He was that person. But it gets even crazier. Online detectives turned into full-blown investigators the second this dropped. They started studying the vocal inflections, the cadence, the phrasing, the energy. Fans online swear that when Kendrick delivers certain lines, it's not even him anymore. It's like something else is speaking through him. One Reddit thread broke down the exact moment his voice cracks in verse 1 and compared it to archival recordings of John Lee Hooker's live performances. They're claiming an 84% vocal similarity in tone and delivery. That's not coincidence. Verse 2 is where things get absolutely chilling. Kendrick transforms into a black woman in the 1950s with an angelic voice. Most people online believe this is Billie Holiday, though he never says her name directly. He describes this woman as having a voice so beautiful it could move heaven itself. But underneath that beauty is a deadly secret. She's Lucifer in disguise, using heavenly music to deceive the masses. She betrays her own family, spirals into cocaine and heroin addiction, and dies alone with needles in her arms. This isn't just storytelling. This is Kendrick confessing he lived through this torment. He felt the addiction, he felt the betrayal, he felt the death. Fans have been dissecting every single word. They found interviews where Kendrick talked about feeling like he's lived multiple lifetimes. They found lyrics from Damn where he references feeling cursed. They found old footage of him saying he doesn't feel himself sometimes, like something else takes over when he writes. Put all that together and it starts looking less like artistic creativity and more like a spiritual phenomenon. And the production itself is eerie. The beat shifts, warps, distorts. There are moments where you hear whispers in the background that sound like multiple voices layering over each other. Audio engineers online have been isolating these layers, and some swear they can hear different languages being spoken simultaneously. One TikTok user slowed down a section at the 4:23 mark and claimed you can hear a voice saying, "I am here" in reverse. Whether that's real or pareidolia, the fact remains this track feels possessed. Then there's the Tupac connection, and this is where it gets really unsettling. Kendrick uses the exact flow and delivery style of Tupac's Made Niggas in certain sections, not as homage, as channeling. Longtime Pac fans have been freaking out because it doesn't just sound similar, it sounds like Pac is literally rapping through Kendrick's body. The rhythm, the aggression, the breath control, it's all there. Some people are saying they got literal chills listening because it felt like hearing a ghost. Kendrick himself has talked about feeling Tupac's presence since he was young, but this feels like full-on possession. But here's the most disturbing part. Every single musician Kendrick describes in this track died tragically. John Lee Hooker struggled with poverty and exploitation. Billie Holiday died from cirrhosis and heart failure after years of drug abuse. And now Kendrick is inserting himself into that pattern. Is this track a warning? Is it a prophecy? Is Kendrick saying he's next in line for a tragic end? People online are genuinely worried this could be a spiritual death note. Let's talk about the biblical references, because this is where theologians and scholars started paying attention. Kendrick specifically mentions Isaiah 14, which is the definitive Old Testament passage about Lucifer's fall from heaven. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. That's not random. That's exact doctrine used in Christian demonology to describe Satan's rebellion. He also references Ezekiel 28, another passage scholars believe describes Lucifer as the anointed cherub who was cast out. Kendrick isn't just using the Bible for flavor, he's using precise theological texts that describe the origin story of the devil. Online detectives found that Kendrick has been studying Kabbalah, Gnosticism, and occult philosophy for years. There are photos of him wearing shirts with esoteric symbols. There are interviews where he talks about exploring spirituality beyond traditional Christianity. But nobody expected him to come out and say, "I am the devil reincarnated," with this level of conviction. This isn't metaphor, this is confession. Now let's get into the motive, because this is where everything starts clicking into place. Why would Kendrick Lamar, at the peak of his career, drop a track like this? Why would he risk his reputation, his legacy, his entire public image by admitting he believes he's Lucifer reincarnated? The answer is way deeper than anyone realizes, and it connects directly to the Drake beef, his childhood trauma, and a spiritual crisis that's been building for over a decade. Let's start with Kendrick's upbringing. He grew up in Compton, California, surrounded by gang violence, poverty, and chaos. But the part people don't talk about enough is his relationship with his father, Kenny Duckworth. According to multiple reports and Kendrick's own lyrics, his father was strict, distant, and at times harsh. There are rumors that Kendrick was kicked out of his house as a teenager after a major conflict. That mirrors exactly what he describes in verse 1 of Reincarnated, the father casting out the son. That's not fiction, that's trauma. And Kendrick has been processing that trauma through the lens of Lucifer being cast out of heaven by God the Father. He's literally comparing his earthly father to God and himself to the fallen angel. That's a devastating psychological framework to live inside. But it goes deeper. Kendrick's obsession with reincarnation didn't start with this album. It's been a recurring theme since To Pimp a Butterfly in 2015. On that album, there's a character named Lucy, which is short for Lucifer. Lucy represents temptation, self-destruction, and the enemy within. Kendrick has said in interviews that Lucy is always whispering in his ear, trying to pull him away from righteousness. But what if Lucy isn't just a character? What if Kendrick genuinely believes there's a demonic force attached to him? What if he's been fighting spiritual possession for years, and this track is him finally surrendering to it? Think about the timeline. After To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick released Damned in 2017, an album obsessed with duality, curses, and the concept of being marked by God or the devil. The opening track, Blood, ends with Kendrick being shot after trying to help a blind woman, symbolizing how doing good can still lead to destruction. The album ends with the tracks playing in reverse order, creating a loop, a cycle, almost like reincarnation itself. He's been building this narrative for years. Then came the Drake beef in 2024, and this is where the spiritual warfare angle becomes impossible to ignore. On the surface, it looked like a rap battle, subliminals, diss tracks, social media jabs, but if you listen to Kendrick's Reincarnated with the context of that beef, it becomes clear this was never about rap. This was about Kendrick battling his own inner demons, and Drake became the physical representation of everything Kendrick hates about himself.
In Reincarnated, God tells Kendrick, every individual is only a version of you. How can they forgive when there's no forgiveness in your heart? That line is crucial. It means Kendrick sees everyone, including Drake, as a reflection of himself. The beef wasn't Kendrick versus Drake, it was Kendrick versus Kendrick. And by destroying Drake publicly, by humiliating him, by refusing to show mercy, Kendrick damned himself. He chose eternal conflict over reconciliation. He chose pride over peace. He chose hell. And he admits it directly. One of the most haunting lines in the track is, "Before I make peace, I'ma see your ass in hell." That's not a diss, that's a confession. Kendrick is saying he would rather drag everyone down with him than forgive. That's not the mindset of a conscious rapper, that's the mindset of Lucifer. Now let's get into the Bitcoin hit situation, because this detail adds a whole new layer of darkness. In the track, Kendrick reveals that someone offered him Bitcoin to physically harm Drake. He doesn't say how much, but he makes it clear this was a serious, real-world offer. He refused, but the fact that he's even admitting this publicly means the situation was heavy. Who offered him that? Why? And what does it say about the industry that people were willing to pay for violence? Kendrick says, "This don't sit well with me. I'll take them with me to hell." Translation, even though he didn't take the hit, he's still haunted by it, and he believes everyone involved, including himself, is damned. People online have been speculating like crazy. Some think the offer came from industry executives who wanted Drake taken out of the picture. Others think it came from rival gangs or street figures with ties to Kendrick's past. Either way, this isn't gossip. This is Kendrick publicly confessing that his life, his career, and his soul are tangled in something way darker than music.
Let's talk about his son, Enoch. Kendrick named his son after the biblical figure who never died. Enoch was taken directly to heaven by God without experiencing death. That's significant. If Kendrick truly believes he's trapped in a cycle of reincarnation, cursed to live and die over and over, then naming his son Enoch is an act of desperate hope. He's trying to break the curse. He's trying to give his son a different fate. But the question is, can he? Or is his son doomed to inherit the same spiritual torment? And here's where it gets even more twisted. Kendrick's father's name is Kenny Duckworth. Kendrick's real name is Kendrick Lamar Duckworth. The father-son cycle is literal. The casting out, the conflict, the unresolved pain, it's all being passed down generationally. Kendrick is trying to rewrite that story, but in Reincarnated, God tells him, your pride has to die. Meaning, Kendrick can't break the curse until he lets go of his ego, his anger, and his need for control. But can he? Or is he too far gone? Fans have been digging into Kendrick's recent behavior, and there are signs he's been struggling hard. He's been more reclusive, his public appearances are rare. When he does show up, he looks exhausted, drained, like he's carrying the weight of the world. People close to him have said he's been obsessed with spirituality, spending hours studying religious texts, meditating, isolating himself. That's not the behavior of someone at peace. That's the behavior of someone in a spiritual crisis. Put all that together, and this track starts to look less like art and more like a cry for help. Kendrick is telling us he's trapped. He's telling us he believes he's cursed. He's telling us he's Lucifer and he doesn't know how to escape. That's terrifying. That's heartbreaking. And that's the real story behind Reincarnated. But here's the part that really hits different, and it's something people aren't talking about enough. The one who gets caught up in the middle of all this isn't just Kendrick, it's his family. His mother, Paula Oliver, his father, Kenny, his partner, Whitney Alford, his kids. These are people who love him, who've supported him, who've watched him rise to the top of the music world, and now they're watching him unravel spiritually in front of millions of people. Imagine being Kendrick's mother and hearing your son say on a track that he's the devil reincarnated. Imagine being his partner and watching the father of your children publicly confess that he believes he's trapped in a demonic cycle. Imagine being his kids and growing up with this as your father's legacy. That's not just heavy, that's traumatic. The leaked footage, or rather the audio of Reincarnated, has fans genuinely worried about Kendrick's mental health. You can hear the exhaustion in his voice, you can hear the pain, you can hear the desperation.
This isn't the confident, sharp, calculated Kendrick from Good Kid, Mad City, or even the militant Kendrick from Damn. This is a man who sounds broken. And that's somebody's son, somebody's partner, somebody's father, dealing with a level of spiritual torment most people can't even comprehend. People close to the situation have reportedly said Kendrick has been isolating himself, spending days alone in the studio, refusing to talk to friends, barely eating. That's not creative process, that's crisis. And the fact that he's processing it publicly, putting it in his music, means he's either crying out for help or he's completely surrendered to whatever he believes is consuming him. There's also the generational trauma element. Kendrick's father, Kenny Duckworth, grew up in Chicago during one of the most violent eras in that city's history. He moved to Compton to escape, but Compton was just as brutal. Kenny was a gang member. He struggled with violence, with survival, with demons of his own, and those demons were passed down to Kendrick. The unresolved pain, the anger, the sense of being abandoned by a father figure, it all connects back to the Lucifer narrative. Kendrick sees himself as cast out, rejected, and cursed, and he's been living with that wound his entire life. But here's what's heartbreaking. Despite everything, despite the darkness, Kendrick is still trying. In Reincarnated, he begs God for approval. He asks, "Father, did I finally get it right?" He's like a child, desperate for validation, desperate to be seen, desperate to be loved. And God's response is cold, clinical, brutal. Your heart is closed. You love war. Your pride has to die. That's not comfort. That's condemnation. And you can hear Kendrick's soul shatter in that moment. This is a man who's given everything to his art, who's inspired millions, who's won every award, who's been called a genius, a prophet, a voice of a generation. And yet, in his own mind, he's damned. He's fallen. He's lost. That's the tragedy of Kendrick Lamar. And that's what makes Reincarnated so devastating to listen to. Fans online have been sending messages of support, telling Kendrick they're praying for him, that they see his pain, that they want him to find peace. But there are also people who are scared. Scared that this track is a warning. Scared that Kendrick might be heading towards the same tragic end as the musicians he describes. Scared that we're witnessing the unraveling of one of the greatest artists of our time. And honestly, that fear is irrational. This track feels like a goodbye.
Now this is where things get even more disturbing, because we haven't even talked about verse 3 yet. This is the climax of the entire track, and it's the moment where Kendrick comes face to face with God in what can only be described as a spiritual courtroom trial, and it does not go well for him. The production shifts, the beat slows down, the background vocals fade. It's just Kendrick and this deep, commanding voice that represents God the Father. And Kendrick starts pleading his case. He says, "I've been selfless, I've helped the people, I've sacrificed, I've tried to make things right." He's listing everything he thinks should earn him redemption, but God isn't having it. God's response is brutal. He says, "Your heart is closed. You still love war. You're still broken. You haven't learned." And then comes the line that's been haunting fans. "You fell from heaven because you were anxious." Isaiah 14 was the only thing that was prevalent. Let me break that down, because that's one of the most theologically heavy bars in rap history. Isaiah 14 describes Lucifer's fall. "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" But God says Lucifer fell because of anxiety, not rebellion, not pride, anxiety. That reframes the entire fallen angel narrative. It suggests Lucifer wasn't evil, he was afraid, he was insecure, he was desperate for validation, and that fear, that anxiety, led to his downfall. Kendrick is saying he's the same. He fell not because he's evil, but because he's terrified. Terrified of failure, terrified of rejection, terrified of not being enough. And that's when you realize this isn't just a song. This is therapy. This is Kendrick working through trauma, existential dread, and spiritual crisis in real time, and he's doing it in front of the world. But let's go even deeper into the evidence. Fans have been analyzing the voice that plays God in this track, and there's debate about whether it's an actual recording, a synthesized voice, or even Kendrick himself pitched down. Some audio engineers online have speculated that the voice has an unnatural quality to it, like it's layered with frequencies that shouldn't be there. One sound designer on Twitter claimed that when you run the God voice through a spectrogram, there are visual patterns that resemble religious symbols. Whether that's intentional or coincidence, it's eerie as hell. Then there's the Tupac connection, and we need to address this head on because it's the most controversial part of the whole track. Multiple fans, including hardcore Pac scholars, have said that certain sections of Reincarnated sound exactly like Tupac Shakur, not inspired by, not mimicking, but like Pac is literally speaking through Kendrick. The flow on certain bars mirrors Made Niggas so closely that people have done side-by-side comparisons, and the similarity is uncanny. But here's where it gets weird. Kendrick never mentions Tupac by name in the track. He talks about being reincarnated through blues musicians, soul singers, and modern rappers, but he never says Tupac. So why do people hear Pac's voice so clearly? Is it collective imagination? Is it because Kendrick has studied Pac so deeply that he's absorbed his essence? Or is it something more? Some fans genuinely believe Kendrick is channeling Tupac's spirit, and given the themes of the song, that's not as far-fetched as it sounds. There are also claims that Kendrick has visited spiritual healers, mediums, and shamans over the past few years. Unconfirmed reports suggest he's been trying to break a curse he believes has been following him. Some people online have said Kendrick consulted with a West African priest who told him he's carrying the spirits of ancestors who died violently. Others claim he's been working with Kabbalistic mystics who told him he's a reincarnated soul. Whether any of this is true, the fact remains, Kendrick believes it, and that belief is shaping his reality. Let's also talk about the curse pattern. John Lee Hooker, the blues musician Kendrick embodies in verse 1, died at 83 years old after a lifetime of exploitation and financial struggle. Billie Holiday, the singer most believe is referenced in verse 2, died at 44 years old from cirrhosis and heart disease caused by years of heroin and alcohol abuse. Both lived tragic lives, both died broken, and both are considered legends. Kendrick is inserting himself into that lineage. He's saying, "I'm next," and that's terrifying because it implies he believes his fate is already sealed. Fans have been scouring Kendrick's past interviews, and there are moments where he's hinted at feeling cursed. In a 2015 interview, he said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not supposed to be here, like I'm living on borrowed time." In a 2018 podcast appearance, he said, "I've seen things I can't explain, felt things that don't make sense." In a 2022 interview, he mentioned feeling like multiple people live inside me. These aren't random comments. These are clues. Kendrick has been trying to tell us something for years, and we're only now starting to understand.
There's also the matter of the music video, or lack thereof. Reincarnated was released as audio only. No visuals, no video, just sound. Why? Some fans think it's because Kendrick didn't want people to see what he looks like when he's in that state. Others think it's because the visuals would be too disturbing, too dark, too real. One theory suggests Kendrick recorded this in a trance-like state and doesn't even remember making it. Whether that's true or not, the absence of a video makes the track feel even more raw, more intimate, more like a confession you're not supposed to hear. And then there's the reaction from other artists. Notably, no major rapper has commented on Reincarnated. Not Drake, not J. Cole, not Jay-Z, not Eminem, nobody. That silence is loud. It suggests that people in the industry either don't know what to say or they're afraid to touch it. This isn't the kind of track you casually respond to. This is the kind of track that makes people uncomfortable. And that silence speaks volumes. But perhaps the most chilling detail is this. Kendrick's grandmother, who helped raise him, passed away in 2023. She was deeply religious, a devout Christian who prayed for Kendrick constantly. Some fans believe Reincarnated is Kendrick's way of processing her death and his fear that he's lost his spiritual protector. Without her prayers, without her guidance, he feels exposed to the darkness he's been fighting his whole life, and now that darkness has consumed him. Let's take a step back and talk about the bigger picture here, because Reincarnated doesn't exist in a vacuum. This track is part of a much larger pattern in hip-hop where artists have explored spirituality, the occult, and demonic themes. But what makes Kendrick different is that he's not using it as shock value. He's using it as truth. Think about other rappers who've played with these ideas. DMX talked about battling his inner demons and having conversations with God. Kanye West has claimed to be a god himself and has explored messianic themes throughout his career. Jay-Z has been accused of throwing up Illuminati symbols and being part of secret societies. But most of that was either performance art, marketing, or conspiracy theory. Kendrick is different. He's not playing a character. He's not trying to be edgy. He's confessing. And that's what makes this so unsettling. There's also a historical pattern of musicians, especially black musicians, being associated with selling their souls or being cursed. Robert Johnson, the legendary blues guitarist, was famously rumored to have sold his soul to the devil at a crossroads in exchange for supernatural guitar skills. Whether that's true or myth, it became part of his legacy. And now, Kendrick is invoking that same narrative, saying he's lived through those experiences, that he was those musicians. He's connecting himself to a lineage of cursed, tragic, legendary artists. But let's talk about the industry reaction, or again, the lack of reaction. Major music publications like Rolling Stone, Pitchfork, and Complex have been strangely quiet about Reincarnated. A few have published lukewarm reviews calling it ambitious or dense, but nobody is touching the real themes. Nobody is asking Kendrick directly, do you actually believe you're Lucifer reincarnated? Nobody is addressing the mental health concerns. Nobody is talking about the potential danger. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. Because if they take him seriously, they have to confront the possibility that one of the greatest rappers alive is in the middle of a spiritual breakdown. And let's not forget the fans. The Kendrick Lamar fan base is one of the most dedicated, analytical, and intense in all of hip-hop. These are people who've spent years dissecting every bar, every metaphor, every hidden meaning, and even they are divided on Reincarnated. Some think it's genius, a masterpiece of confessional art. Others think it's a cry for help and that Kendrick needs intervention. Some think it's all performance, a concept album taken to the extreme. But a growing number of fans think Kendrick is being literal, that he genuinely believes he's trapped in an eternal cycle of death and rebirth, that he genuinely believes he's Lucifer, and that is what's terrifying. There's also the question of commercial performance. Typically, a Kendrick Lamar release would dominate the charts, break streaming records, and be everywhere. But Reincarnated has been strangely under-promoted. It's almost like his label doesn't know how to market it. How do you sell a track where the artist claims to be the devil? How do you get radio play for a 12-minute spiritual crisis? You don't. And that's why this track feels more like a document than a single. It's not meant to sell, it's meant to explain. And then there's the connection to Kendrick's previous work. On To Pimp a Butterfly, the final track ends with Kendrick having a conversation with Tupac, except Tupac is dead. So who was he really talking to? Was it a creative device, or was Kendrick channeling something? On Damned, the album can be played forwards or backwards, creating a loop, a cycle, a sense of being trapped. And now on Reincarnated, he's explicitly talking about being stuck in an eternal cycle of death and rebirth. It's all connected. Kendrick has been building to this moment for a decade.
And let's talk about the symbolism in his recent public appearances. At the 2024 Super Bowl halftime show, Kendrick wore all white, but his eyes looked hollow. At the Met Gala, he wore a crown of thorns, comparing himself to Christ. But if he's Christ and Lucifer, what does that mean? Is he saying he's both the savior and the destroyer? Is he saying he contains multitudes? Or is he saying he's lost and doesn't know who he is anymore? Fans have been analyzing every photo, every outfit, every gesture, looking for answers. And the more they look, the more questions they have. There's also the matter of Kendrick's silence. Since releasing Reincarnated, he hasn't done a single interview. He hasn't posted on social media. He hasn't made a public statement. He just dropped the track and disappeared. That's not normal rollout behavior. That's the behavior of someone who said everything they needed to say and doesn't want to explain themselves. Or worse, someone who can't explain themselves because they don't fully understand what's happening to them. Some fans think Kendrick is going to retire after this, that Reincarnated is his final statement, his exit from the industry, his way of closing the chapter on his career before something tragic happens. Others think he's going to spiral, that this is the beginning of a darker phase, and that we're going to witness his descent in real time. Either way, nobody thinks Kendrick is okay, and that's what makes this whole situation so heavy. What we're seeing here is bigger than just one artist's spiritual crisis. This is about how the music industry, fame, and trauma intersect in ways that can literally break a person. Kendrick Lamar isn't the first artist to struggle with the weight of success, and he won't be the last. But what makes his situation unique is that he's documenting it in real time, in his music, for the world to witness. The bigger conversation is about mental health in hip-hop. For decades, the culture has glorified toughness, resilience, and never showing weakness, but that mindset has led to countless artists suffering in silence. Kid Cudi opened up about depression and suicidal thoughts. Mac Miller struggled with addiction and died from an overdose. Juice WRLD, Lil Peep, XXXTentacion all lost to mental health struggles and violence. And now Kendrick is showing us what it looks like when someone at the peak of the game is still haunted, still broken, still suffering. There's also the question of responsibility. Does the industry have a responsibility to intervene when an artist is clearly in distress, or is it exploitative to profit off someone's pain? Reincarnated is going to make money. It's going to be streamed millions of times. But what if Kendrick's label, his management, his team are watching him unravel and doing nothing? What does that say about the system? And let's talk about the fans. What's our responsibility as listeners? Do we have a duty to take Kendrick seriously when he says he believes he's Lucifer reincarnated? Or do we dismiss it as artistic expression? Do we send him love and support? Or do we consume his pain as entertainment? These are questions we need to grapple with, because this isn't just about music anymore. This is about a human being's soul. The cultural impact of Reincarnated is massive. Kendrick is one of the most influential artists of this generation. He shaped the sound, the topics, and the consciousness of modern hip-hop. If he's publicly wrestling with reincarnation, demonology, and spiritual warfare, that's going to influence other artists. We're already seeing younger rappers exploring darker, more occult themes, but are they doing it thoughtfully, or are they just copying the aesthetic without understanding the weight of it? There's also the religious angle. Kendrick grew up in a Christian household. His music has always had gospel elements, but Reincarnated feels like a departure from faith or a crisis of faith. He's not praising God. He's being condemned by God. He's not finding redemption. He's accepting damnation. That's a radical shift, and it's going to make a lot of religious listeners uncomfortable. Some churches have already started discussing the track, warning young people not to listen, calling it demonic. But is that fair? Or is Kendrick simply being honest about his doubts, his fears, and his spiritual struggle? And finally, there's the question of legacy. How will Reincarnated be remembered? Will it be seen as Kendrick's magnum opus, the moment he laid his soul bare? Or will it be seen as the beginning of his downfall? Will future generations study it as a masterpiece of confessional art? Or will it be a cautionary tale about fame, trauma, and mental health? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain. This track has changed the conversation around Kendrick Lamar forever.
So where does this leave us? Where does this leave Kendrick? And what happens next? Because Reincarnated doesn't feel like a conclusion. It feels like the beginning of something darker. Let's be real. The most terrifying possibility is that Kendrick genuinely believes everything he's saying in this track, that he truly thinks he's Lucifer reincarnated, that he truly thinks he's cursed, that he truly thinks he's doomed. If that's the case, then what we're witnessing isn't art, it's a breakdown. And that's heartbreaking, because Kendrick has given so much to the culture, so much to his fans, so much to the world. To see him in this state is devastating. But there's another possibility, and it's equally disturbing. What if Kendrick is right? Not in a literal sense, but in a spiritual or a psychological sense. What if he has absorbed the trauma, the pain, and the spirits of the artists who came before him? What if carrying the weight of Black musical history, the exploitation, the addiction, the death, has fractured his sense of self? What if he no longer knows where Kendrick ends and the ghosts begin? That's not possession in a supernatural sense. That's trauma, and that's just as real. Some fans think Kendrick is going to disappear for a while after this, that he's going to retreat, seek help, work on healing. Others think he's going to double down, go deeper into the darkness, and release even more disturbing material. There are even whispers that he's working on a visual album to accompany Reincarnated, and if that's true, it's going to be intense. Then there's the Drake situation. Kendrick says in the track, "Before I make peace, I'ma see your ass in hell." That's not just a bar, that's a promise. It means this beef isn't over. It means Kendrick is still at war, not just with Drake, but with himself. And until he finds peace within, the external battles will continue. But here's the tragic part. Kendrick knows this. He knows his pride is destroying him. He knows he needs to forgive, but he can't, and that's what makes him feel damned.
There's also speculation about what the industry is going to do. Are labels going to distance themselves from Kendrick? Are brands going to pull endorsements? Are festivals going to hesitate to book him? Because Reincarnated isn't safe. It's not comfortable. It's not marketable. And in an industry driven by profit, that makes Kendrick a risk. But here's the real question, and it's the one nobody wants to ask. Is Kendrick in danger? Not from external threats, but from himself. Is this track a warning that he's reaching a breaking point? Multiple musicians throughout history have released confessional work right before their deaths. Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, Mac Miller. They all left behind music that in hindsight felt like goodbyes. Is Reincarnated Kendrick's goodbye? God, I hope not, but the thought is chilling. And finally, what about us? What do we do with this information? Do we keep streaming the track, dissecting it, debating it? Or do we reach out collectively as a culture and tell Kendrick we see him, we hear him, and we care? Because at the end of the day, Kendrick Lamar is a human being. He's not a god, he's not a demon. He's a man in pain, a man searching for answers, a man who might be drowning. And maybe, just maybe, this track is his way of asking for a lifeline. Stay locked in because this story is far from over. More details are going to drop, more people are going to react, and Kendrick himself might eventually speak on this, though honestly, I'm not sure he will. This feels like the kind of truth you drop and then walk away from. But we're going to be here, covering every single development, every theory, every piece of the puzzle as it emerges. So let me ask you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Kendrick Lamar genuinely believes he's Lucifer reincarnated? Or do you think this is the most elaborate piece of artistic expression we've ever seen in hip-hop? Do you think he's in danger? Do you think the industry should intervene? Or do you think this is his journey and we need to respect it even if we don't understand it? And here's the bigger question. Does Reincarnated change how you see Kendrick's entire catalog? When you go back and listen to Good Kid, Mad City, or To Pimp a Butterfly, or Damn, do those albums hit different now? Do they feel like chapters in a much darker story? Do they feel like warning signs we all missed? Because honestly, that's how it feels to me now. It's like we've been watching Kendrick's descent for years, and we just didn't realize it until this moment. I also want to hear from anyone who's gone through their own spiritual crises. Have you ever felt like Kendrick describes in this track? Like you're trapped in a cycle? Like you're carrying weight that isn't yours? Like you're battling something you can't see but can feel? Because I think a lot of people, especially in the Black community, resonate with those feelings. Generational trauma, inherited pain, spiritual warfare. These aren't just concepts. For many, they're reality. And Kendrick is giving voice to that in a way few artists ever have. Make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on those notifications because we're going to be covering every single twist, every revelation, every moment of this story as it unfolds. This is historic, this is unprecedented, and you're witnessing it happen in real time.
Before I go, I just want to say this. Kendrick, if you ever somehow see this, we love you, bro. We see your pain. We hear you cry. You've given us so much through your music, and we want you to be okay. Whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone. There's help, there's hope, and there's healing. Don't let the darkness win. All right, y'all, that's it for this one. I appreciate every single one of you for watching, for engaging, for thinking. This isn't just gossip. This is a conversation about life, about pain, about legacy, and I'm honored to have it with you. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, not everything that sounds like art is just art. Sometimes it's a confession, sometimes it's a warning, and sometimes it's a cry for help. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.